So I already kind of made a video on this, but it wasn't really as in depth, and it was really more based on the Odyssey. And this video is based on the Odyssey too, but there are other things I want to bring up. So yeah, why is race swapping such a goddamn? How did I already not know how to? Oh my god, it's just fuck. Why is race swapping such a controversial thing for people in movies? I can understand it from a historical aspect. Like if you were going to make a TV show set in, I don't know, 1800s London, for example, I'm not expecting to see a Chinese immigrant or a black man or black woman or black family living in London at that time. Maybe it happened, but I'm not really expecting to see that, especially in a historical drama. Or if you're going to make a movie based on a real person, like MLK, for example, I wouldn't want MLK to be race swapped. But if the story that's taking place isn't really based on reality, like a superhero movie, I could give a fuck if the character is race swapped. Yet so many people seem very irked by race swapping in these scenarios, and I can't really figure why. Again, like I said, when it comes to historical things, I can understand that. You know, like I think they tried to race swap Cleopatra, and I don't know when this was. I don't remember exactly when this was. It was probably like the beginning of the 2020s, or maybe even like the late 2010s. And I don't remember exactly what race they had swapped Cleopatra into, but I do know that it probably wasn't the right casting, considering Cleopatra is an ancient Egyptian. Granted, her family is of Greek lineage, so is it Greek lineage? I don't know. It's like either Greek or Roman. I think Greek, but the point was that the casting was off, so it was like a fair reaction. I think I could be wrong, but you know, if someone could correct me on that. But from what I understand, or at least from what I remember, it was like the wrong casting. Compare that to The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid live action remake, specifically because they casted a black woman to be the Little Mermaid, and while it was obviously a dumb move, because who needs a live action Little Mermaid? We could just make a new movie. The actress being black didn't have any point to being. It didn't have any bearing upon the movie itself. It was really a nothing point. People got angry at the movie for the wrong reasons, and it was stupid. Like, the right answer is right there. Like, you ever have a situation when you see someone complaining about something that is clearly fucked up, but they keep getting mad at the wrong thing? Like, they're almost there. Like, they almost got it, but they just don't, and it just pisses you off. I really hate that. I think I had one of those situations recently, and I already forgot what it was about because it was on YouTube. God damn, my brain. I really gotta work on my memory. Jesus Christ. Anyway, I always found race swapping to be kind of a weird thing. Like, sometimes these people who are against race swapping will mention, like, making Black Panther white. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Black Panther white in the comics at some point? I keep hearing that. I have to admit, firstly, I'm not huge on comic books. I just bought my first comic book recently, so I'm obviously not the best person to bring that point up. But I keep hearing it, or I just heard it actually, and I just wanted to know if that was a true statement. So now I'm saying it out loud, it's probably not a good idea to be mentioning this. I know. I'm gonna look this up real quick. Give me a second. I just want to be sure. Okay, I just looked it up. Apparently, it's not like a main story thing, but apparently it did happen in the comics, but it's not like a mainline story. So yeah. But even so, like even if I didn't know that Black Panther was white at some point, or if they had, or that is just, this was a thing, it still does bring up another point, because when exactly is it okay to race swap a character? Or as you know, because it just came out, the Odyssey, not Greek, despite the fact that it's a Greek story. And in my initial video, the initial video that I made about it, I'd said that I didn't really care all that much. And that was also because I wasn't going to see it, so I didn't give a fuck at all. But now that, some time has passed and I've thought about it a little more, I actually do think that it has some merit, because it is a Greek story being told from a Greek perspective. Not Greek, but I guess, I mean, it's a Greek story basically, but it's not being told, I guess, or being presented accurately because the characters aren't Greek. And I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm not really sure if I'm gonna see it, because ticket prices are so expensive and whatever. But but it does actually lead credence to the question of when is it okay to race swap someone. And in the previous video, I mentioned that someone made a story based on Indian culture and Indian folklore, and if they had race swapped the characters, I might not care so much. But then I also mentioned at the same time that I'd probably be a hypocrite if that actually happened, and I'm going to be a hypocrite now, because I probably would be kind of pissed off if they did that. So yeah, but then again, like I said, it hasn't happened. So, but it still is an important question to ask, because I think once you go through it in that way, I guess, then I guess you can't really answer it. But then at the same time, they are just stories. They aren't real. These aren't things that actually took place. They're just fairy tales, and so it shouldn't really matter at all. So again, back to that question, if the same thing were to happen to my culture, if somebody took an Indian folktale and turned it into a movie, I couldn't honestly tell you that I'm 100% sure that I would either be offended if they race off the characters, or if they didn't, because I don't know. Honestly, that's like the honest answer I come with. I don't know. I doubt that the Western media would ever adapt such a story, and I don't have to worry about Bollywood, because they always, it's Indian, or it's South Asian, or Indian. So it's not like I have to worry about it from that side of the pond. I don't know why. I mean, I'm Caribbean anyway, so it's not like it's like a big important thing for me. Point is, I'm rambling. Point is that race swapping is like a really, I think, tender thing to talk about, because there's not really a right answer, in my opinion, when it comes to like fictional characters and fictional stories. Like on an historically accurate level, yeah, that makes sense. You shouldn't race swap a character when it's an actual person and you're trying to represent the actual person. But when it comes to fictional stories, can you really be sure that that's the right answer, or that that race swapping isn't a good or bad thing? I mentioned that comic book that I just bought. It's Superman smashes the Klan. Because what better way to get into comics than to read a story about punching Nazis or fascists or whatever? Same thing. Anyway, one of the things that I was thinking about when I decided to make the video, like 2 hours ago, was that that Superman could be race swapped. Controversial opinion, I know, but I'll explain it. because Superman, despite being presented as a white male, has none of the traits of being a white male when you think about it. He's a refugee from a destroyed planet, an illegal alien in the US. That's his intro to the world of comics. He is not some white dude or any, like, I shouldn't even say like he's not even human, really. I mean, I know he looks human and acts human because he is in everything but like actual biology. He is not a human, and so he doesn't. And because his backstory isn't like, I guess what you call, I guess the typical white male intro to the world. That's not the best way to word it, but I'll figure it out at some point. But because it's not like like an average story like Bruce Wayne becoming Batman or Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man, where the character is just living and just doing whatever, and then some terrible tragedy or whatever turns them into that character well into their life. Superman already starts off pretty much fucked. His planet, like I said, his planet and his people are destroyed. And when I was thinking about that, I was actually made a comparison to the Syrian refugee crisis, and I realized Superman has a lot more in common with those people than any like white person in America. And realistically, like, it shouldn't really matter because Superman doesn't. It doesn't matter where Superman comes from. It's what Superman stands for that matters the most. But I still felt like it was an important thing that I made this connection that Superman, despite looking like it doesn't really have the same traits as any like white male, other than the fact that he's from Kansas. Actually, fun fact, I was watching some YouTuber a while back, and I learned that she or her family immigrated from Kenya to Kentucky, and I was like, there are immigrants in Kentucky? What the fuck? Superman, to me, could be race swapped for like any survivor of any like fucking war-torn country, and it wouldn't change anything to me because it's basically where Superman comes from. Same thing with like Magneto, because Magneto also comes from a war-torn country. Actually, it's interesting because in both those cases, Superman and Magneto, they're based upon Jewish survivors of the Holocaust, and it's interesting to see how now with now it's the Middle East and it's Muslims and Islamophobia that's like the center of persecution in the world, that their backstories really don't their original backstories really don't mean much now as they do in the present time, and it's really mostly because of time itself, just things changing and whatnot. So I think that's pretty interesting, especially in Magneto's case, because Superman at least is like you could sub that plot in like any survivor of any war-torn country or tragedy or whatever, but Magneto is specifically Jewish, and so I'm interested to see the next however many years how they try to change, if they even decide to change Magneto's backstory to make him like some Palestinian survivor or Syrian or Lebanese or whatever survivor of whatever conflict, because Magneto is a Holocaust survivor. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I sidetracked so much. It doesn't really matter in those cases because I think those characters aren't really defined by the fact that they are white, compared to like Bruce Wayne, who was like, in my mind, the whitest person to ever live. That man looks like he thinks mayo is spicy. And I guess Peter Parker too. But I think in those cases, it's like and I guess it took way too long to get to this point, but I think it's whether or not the character is defined by their race, which is something I heard from somewhere else. And I thought it was also an interesting point because I feel like, well, I shouldn't say I feel like, because I don't feel like it, because someone else said it. Some of the characters technically who are race swapped, who are white, usually tend to have that happen to them because the race isn't definitive to their character. They just have white skin and that's it. Whereas minority characters like Black Panther or Static Shock or Green Lantern tend to be whatever ethnicity because it defines them. Like Shang-Chi from Marvel is Chinese because that part of who he is defines his character. Or I'm trying to think give me a second. You know what, another good example, Miles Morales. I just realized Miles Morales is also defined by, I think, his race, because it is described, I think, many times that he's Puerto Rican and black. I think, I don't know if he's Dominican or if half Dominican, or if that's just like something that was like I'm mixing up because of the Spider-Verse movies. But he's at least Puerto Rican, and I think that part of his character is defined. So, like, if you tried to make a Miles Morales story, I feel like you kind of have to mention that to some extent. I'm not knowledgeable about these things totally, but I do. My point is that the characters who are race swap tend to be race swap because the other ethnicity doesn't define who they are. Like Spider-Man, like with Peter Parker and Miles Morales, the race doesn't define who they are. It's the character and like their beliefs and what they do that defines them. Whereas the Black Panther has to be black because that defines or is part of the definition of his character, and that's why he's black. So something else that I realized is that when it comes to race swapping, people usually only bring up white characters who get race swapped into people of color. Nobody ever talks about when it happens the other way around. And I know what you're thinking, Hollywood. How could that doesn't happen at all? It's you only ever see characters get race swapped by being from being white characters into characters who have melanin. And then to that, I raise you Darth Vader. What are we raising Darth Vader?
Your destiny lies with me.
That wasn't the thing I wanted you to do. Anyway, Darth Vader, I think is an interesting case because despite the fact that he is typically seen as a white person, he isn't really fully white. If you want to go by those standards that people usually go to when it comes to race swapping, because Darth Vader was voiced by James Earl Jones, a black man. This camera is not it's not centered properly, which is annoying me. God damn it. There we go. Darth Vader is voiced by a black man. Now, I know that he was physically portrayed by David Prowse, who was Scottish, and Sebastian Shaw, who was whatever the fuck he was. But Darth Vader was voiced by a black man, and usually was, up until James Earl Jones' death. And recently, when in Maul Shadow Lord, Darth Vader had no voice. He was just there, like fucking Jason Voorhees, just walking around mauling people. No pun intended. Anyway, the reason why I bring up Darth Vader is because if we are to go off the standard, the strict standard that specific characters cannot be race swapped, not just specific characters, sorry, if characters cannot be race swapped at all, then why were people so cool with Darth Vader being race swapped when he was voiced by a black man? That doesn't make sense. I mean, look at him. He is literally black. He is not figuratively black. He is literally black. I know that's like a stupid thing, but the point is that, if we're gonna get offended by white characters who get race swapped into other races, then shouldn't we be offended by this race swap that happened with Darth Vader? Shouldn't we be offended that Darth Vader got retconned from being at least half black to completely white? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. It doesn't really matter to me personally. My point is that if we're going to go off these standards, then should we go all the way with these standards and, really acknowledge that, Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker should be black? And then again, I guess you can't really make Anakin black because he was a slave, and that would bring up a whole other point. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe they should have kept him black for historical accuracy. God damn. I just got myself in trouble. I should make my apology video now. No, but really though, the point that I'm trying to make is that, if we're gonna get all high and mighty and strict with these rules, then we should really apply all these rules appropriately. Which in this case would have to ask the question, why was Darth Vader race swapped? I just realized I didn't get to why I think characters why people get offended by it. Oh my god, I hate my story so much. I haven't really gotten to why I think people get offended by race swapping. And so I guess I'll just make that quick. I think part of the reason is depending on who's getting race swapped. It tends to be a mess. It tends to mess with people's identity in some way because they relate to this character. Let's say I think Raven is like based on Indian culture, because I kind of do think that. Let's say Raven from Teen Titans is like defined as like an Indian, even though she's the Antichrist. Let's just say that they brought up some Indian stuff to go along with her character and say that, that defines part of who she is, and then they make a movie about Raven and they race swap her to being some other race or ethnicity. I think that would mess with a lot of people's minds, even though Raven is the Antichrist, and that definitely shouldn't bother people at all. Or if we try to make a more realistic standard, let's say to make a Batman movie and Bruce Wayne is black in that movie for some reason, even though Bruce Wayne isn't really defined by the fact that he's white, people could still get offended, I think, because it messes with their psyche a little, that they're not being represented in media. Now, ironically, a lot of the people who are offended by race swapping, at least from what I've noticed, tend to be white people who get very represented in media and don't like it when other ethnicities get represented in media. And sometimes they'll say, you should just create your own character. And that does happen, believe it or not. And some people will still get offended by that. At that point, you just say that they're racist and call it a day. But I think that it kind of messes with them too, with those people specifically, that they're not getting as much representation as they used to in media. Because if you remember, back in the day, it used to be only white people, and then there was like a small minority for black people, and then everyone else had to go fuck themselves. And now there's so much more representation, and it's messing with the psyche of these people who are not liking the fact that they aren't getting as much representation as they used to, even though they used to be all the representation in media. So I think that's also partially why. I don't really have a way to end this video. I never actually write scripts for any of these things. I'm just rambling throughout the entirety of the video, so yeah. Maybe I should start writing scripts for these things. But yeah, it's basically where I'm at, and I'd like to hear other people's opinions because it makes for interesting conversation and also boosts my channel. So yeah, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Do all that, and yeah, I'll see ya.